Hey everybody, I'm really excited about today's episode. I talked with my friend Anamaria Dorgo, and we had a really great conversation about building and nurturing communities of practice. If you spend any time in a community with Anamaria, you'll quickly find she never stops learning and sharing with such generosity and quality that you can't help but be inspired to try and do the same. Anamaria talks to us about what people tend to overcomplicate when trying to build a community and the vital skills of the future. I was also so delighted to get to share with her one of my own experiences from being a part of the L&DShakers amazing community. Without any further ado, here's my conversation with Anamaria Dorgo. Thank you all so much for joining the Building Thinkers podcast. Today, I'm joined by my new internet friend, Anamaria Dorgo, and I'm so excited. I think we're going to talk today all things facilitation. We're going to talk about learning and development. We're going to talk about building really authentic and meaningful communities. And so, Anamaria, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for the invite. I'm super excited. Can't wait to chat all things community with you today.
Yes. Okay. We love to start off with a little bit of how we met each other. And I think in this case, maybe we can tell both of our sides of how we met.
Yeah, sure thing. So for me, I'm placed in between two main communities. And so sometimes I know that I see people, but I can't recall. Like, have I met you first in the Buddha community? Have I met you first in the L&DShakers community? My gut is telling me it was L&DShakers community. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, it was. Yes. So we met it through the L&DShakers community. Anamaria will talk more about that in a little bit. It was instantly clear just the generosity of spirit and research and preparation and really love that you put into those communities. And so I was drawn into that from another internet friend, Kara Kirby. She was the one that introduced me to L&DShakers, and then saw the amazing things that you were sharing in the community you were building there. And so that's what got us off and running.
Yay! Excited.
Okay, this is a moment in time where there was a in workplace article that was shared within L&DShakers, the 2023 Workplace Learning Report. And it talks about the top 4 focus areas for L&D in 2023. And they are, number 1, aligning learning programs to business goals. Number 2, upskilling employees. Number 3, and this is the one I think we'll get into, creating a culture of learning. And number 4, improving employee retention. And so I think that we're in a moment in time where learning and development has been griping about not being at the big girl table, and now we are. And so I see it as a moment in time to say, what are we going to do with that? And in particular, with creating a culture of learning, community is such an important part of that. I think there's a very large gap between what people want to see in communities, what their vision of what they can be, and then their experience of how that plays out. And so I'd love to get rolling on, tell us a little bit of your background, how you got into communities, and then we can kind of build on if only people knew, when it comes to communities. Does that sound okay?
Yes, that sounds awesome. Yeah, so I guess that as many other folks that ended up doing work in communities, with communities, I kind of stumbled into this world. My background is HR. I worked as an HR business partner, and then I pivoted to learning and development, which is amazing. It's my happy place. I love learning. And as I was working as a learning and development manager, I was the one learning person in the company. And encouraged by my manager, I started going out of the company and my workplace. I went to LinkedIn and I started approaching other standalone L&Ds in other startups here in Amsterdam. I'm based in Amsterdam. And so that's kind of how it started. It started from my personal need to exchange with peers, see what they're working on, get feedback, and have a sounding board on the stuff that I was working on. And it started as a working group. We were calling it back then. We weren't calling it a community. It didn't have a name, anything. So things escalated pretty quickly after COVID, the fact that we moved online and moved from local to international. And then that's it. It's 3 years ago already. So that was the beginning of L&DShakers, which is now this beautiful peer community for learning and development professionals around the globe. And it brought me to pivot again my career, and I moved from learning and development focus to community building full time, and I'm doing that at Butter, which is a platform for virtual workshops and collaborative sessions. So that's my background, and usually I think community is not, it's not something that's new. It feels a bit new or newer for Europe, and it's still blooming. It's quite a mature role or job or profession in the US. And very, like, I think at their core, community started becoming very popular around products, so user communities, and that's kind of how the profession came to flourish. And a lot of the people that end up working in communities of product, they don't come from a background of people or HR or L&D, and they're coming usually from a marketing background, for example. And I'm very happy, in light of all of these beautiful reports that we're seeing that are kind of taking the pulse of the industry. I'm very excited and very happy to see communities becoming more and more important within companies as well. And there's tons of benefits to that, and we can touch on that as well, because it goes even beyond than learning, and I think it touches on something that a lot of companies are struggling with today, which is belonging to that space and feeling engaged. We can talk about engagement as well. They take many shapes and forms, and they're not as easy to to crack. And for me as well, I'm at it for over 3 years now, and there's every day is a learning day because they're volatile. They change, like they're kind of, imagine them even as living ecosystem, right? So you're putting a group of people that is very diverse, and you're putting them together, and usually a community functions if there's a purpose. Like there has to be a clear purpose. Why are we gathering? And in communities that are popping, for example, L&DShakers, it's a community that it's not affiliated to a company. So when these communities are popping, that purpose is important, but when you're building it within a company, like any other initiative within an organization, you have to think about what's in it for the people. So why do we gather, us as employees? And then also you always have to keep in the back of your mind, what is it for the company? Nothing happens within an organization that doesn't have an impact. And that's an interesting dynamic right there, because I guess that what I wish people knew about communities, to come back to your initial question, is that is this. And I guess, again, as L&D, we're very used to steer, like steer very often with a lot of control our initiatives. We're kind of the masters. We're putting stuff out there and hoping they will come and so on. And community is a very different approach to that. It's more of an enablement approach. And to make it truly, like to give it even a chance, we need to take a co-creative approach to it and human-centered design approach to it. And that's not how we're usually typically used to work as L&Ds traditionally. That changes though. But what I wish people knew about communities, that you constantly have to move in between these two states of I'm guarding the vision, and obviously I'm kind of putting a path there, like there has to be a general direction, and I'm moving from that to enablement, and I'm moving from control to allowance and emergence, and from structure to emergent, and that's such a delicate balance to crack, especially within companies where culture, because we talked about that already, plays such a critical role.
Right. Oh, that's so powerful. And so one of the things that was coming to me as you were talking about that is kind of this, maybe it's I don't know if transformation is the right word, but maybe a renegotiation of what the role is of someone who is leading and guiding a community. And you talk about that shift from a teacher as disseminator of information. Now that information is fully commoditized and available in our fingertips, the role of the teacher and student is also a renegotiation of what as the teacher is in my control and should be in my control, and where do I allow for student agency, where do I allow for enablement of students to follow their passions and interest into as they're learning. I often think about that piece and this idea of guiding the vision. I think it's so clear to me, at least from being a part of L&DShakers, for example, that you do that with such intentionality and gentleness. That's the other thing that's coming to me is like, I was thinking as I was reading through kind of our notes document and thinking about my experience in there, is that it's clear to me that you nurture certain things, and I didn't have another word for it other than like nip. Like, what do you nurture and what do you nip? Like, what do you stop or maybe nix? And I think you do that by, I see it by modeling. So, for example, in this L&DShakers community, and so for our listeners, how we often experience that, or how I've experienced it, is through a Slack channel that has different threads on different topics that people contribute to all hours of the day. And since it's an international community, like when I am sleeping, there's still things that are happening in there, and I can wake up and see opportunities and workshops and just, again, such generosity. But I see that there is a willingness for everyone to truly share and give to the community. And so it doesn't seem to me like there's very many people, at least that are visible, that are kind of using it in a one-sided way. I see so much, if there is something that somebody can contribute to or say, I have an opportunity to connect you with, or, and I think in comparison to some other communities that I've been a part of, and maybe this hits on your product point, because there's one in particular that's a product community that I'm in, where I want it to be more like this. I want it to be more open and sharing, but it ends up being people selling their services, which is totally, there's a spot for that. But in L&DShakers, there's a specific thread for that. And then people are all in, they know they're going to that thread, and there are, like, we have to all eat. And so there are sales opportunities and beautiful connections that happen there, but it's just in its space. And so I've seen people in this other product community, like, almost you can hear the desperation in their voice asking for help, and people are responding with, yeah, I'll get on a call, like, and you can tell for a fee. And it's like they just want to learn how to like turn on the right button to make their thing work. Can somebody just answer that? Maybe my question here is, when you think about this, what you've helped build and create in this living ecosystem, you know, when you started to give it some of those guardrails, can you talk about that intentionality and how that maybe played out over time? I know this is not on our sheet, but that just came to me.
Yes, that's awesome. It doesn't have to be on the sheet because I have plenty to say about this. So thank you for the question. Um, so you want, we want the community to be inclusive. So we are welcoming people that are freelancing. We're welcoming CEOs of edtech and learning solution companies, etc., within the community. We do draw a line in specifically marketing roles of set companies, because simply I believe that someone that works in marketing has a hard time empathize and actually contribute to those type of conversations that we have. But if you're a freelancer or if you're a CEO of a company, you might actually have lots of experience behind, and you might contribute a lot to, and we notice that there's a lot of our contributions, like half of them are coming from L&D professionals within companies, and the other half are coming from people that are offering their services to this potential target audience.
Right.
And just this morning, I was thinking about exactly that. How do we actually, communities are important levers for networking, and they're definitely important levers for selling and business. But there are two ways to do that. You can go there and use that approach of shouting, and this is me, and I'm awesome, and here's what I'm selling, and this is what it costs, and come to me. And I've rarely seen that work. When I think it's a major turnoff for a lot of us. We're very used to that, and it simply doesn't work in combination with community. We do have a channel for that. Like my understanding of that is very hard to to stop certain behaviors, but it's okay to give a container where that's allowed. So even from the beginning, when we moved from a working group to a community, we brought together some of our members and back then the core community team, and we talked about what are our values. And it was clear from the beginning that you cannot stop self-promotion. Otherwise, you will have to be there like a police woman or person, like kind of monitoring all the threads. So we said, we can't do that. So if we can't do that, why don't we create a container and a space where that's allowed? And the members have the opportunity to opt in if I want to see those offers, or opt out. So that's what we created with that Slack thread. And now I see so many people in L&DShakers and in the butter community selling their services in such a human way. And if you're showing up each day and you're genuinely contributing to the conversation, you can end up selling your services and products much more than by shouting that you do that. And the reason, after my reflection this morning, is I think you're managing to do two things. The first thing is to create trust. We know that trust is crucial when you're selling something. By showing up, generously sharing an article, sharing stuff that you've worked on, and helping people, having coffees with people without a fee and so on, you're building that trust. And something that I saw happening in L&DShakers is people recommending someone else's services to someone else's thread. So if you're doing that right, you do not have to promote your services because other folks would do it for you. Because you had a chat with them, you met them, you haven't tried to sell them anything. There's this trust here, like this is human to human, we're in this together. So when there's a call to action, I'm searching for a provider, there's so many people actually promoting other folks in the community, which is amazing. And then the second thing beyond trust is this top of mind. Yes. If you're showing up regularly, you are top of mind to people. And that often makes all the difference because, it's a crowded marketplace. Some of us are super niched down, and that's amazing. But in general, there's so many people offering same services. So in that situation, it's critical to keep top of mind for folks. And whenever an opportunity pops or rises, you are top of mind for them. So I think those are two things that I will say. And to protect the community from that, we have clear guidelines. And there is someone that always looks, and whenever something is misplaced, I always go back to the person and I ask them to remove that and put it in the right channel. So there's this constant reinforcement of those rules that we put in place.
It kind of reminds me of a very intentional garden. I don't know why that's coming to me, but it's like kind of organizing the plants into their proper rows. Like there is, so I think that that's the beauty that I see here is this balance of such clear intentionality. And so what you're sharing here is it's not a one-time decision. We didn't write our values, posted it up on the wall, and then never followed through. It's a daily, down to the individual, to say with kindness, like, this is where this goes. Thank you for sharing that. This is where it goes. And all of those seemingly small moments build what is this immersive, engaging, what I experience as very generous and loving experience as a user. And when we were talking about those two areas, the creating trust and being top of mind, I think the other thing that I see happening is it's also human to human because somebody is sharing an authentic need. And so versus some sort of, kind of cold call situation, somebody is already sharing, here's my need. So people are responding when they really truly are a fit or they know somebody that is, versus just like, again, shouting, this is what I do, this is what I do, look at me. It really is, look at my friend here who does that, who'd be a great fit. Or I've had an experience with this tool. So sometimes we hear like product recommendation and things like that are very genuine and authentic and not like, here's my referral link. I mean, maybe that's there too, but I don't see that. It's like, you are obviously a promoter of butter, working in butter, and yet it's from a genuine place of, I see what it can do. Here's my experience with it. Let me invite you in and show you what it can do. And as someone that's experienced some of your sessions with it, that just shines through. You don't have to sell
Mm,
anything because you are experiencing it and then letting people decide, does this fit for kind of your
yeah,
use case?
yeah, yes.
I'm going to take you back to my life in 2012 to 2014. I was a co-founder of an ed tech startup called Infuse Learning. And it was a formative assessment tool. We could do drawing responses and things like that before that was fully happening. So it was our purpose statement, or kind of our tagline, I guess, was bringing students to the center of the learning conversation. I feel like that's what I also hear in, as we're talking about communities, bringing the people from the community into the center of the learning conversation. Does that resonate with you, that when we're looking to enable learners, I think there's some skepticism where people that have maybe been in traditional L&D are like, well, if we just like put it out there, how do we know that they will engage with it, or that learners will learn on their own, or X, Y, and Z? And so, what would you maybe say that you've learned around this enablement piece
Mm,
of being intentional, but then also getting out of the way?
mm.
Anything around that?
So many thoughts though, and I'm like,
Right.
which thread do I pull now? Many,
Multiple.
many thoughts actually, and the first thing that I'm going to share, I just had a chat this morning with Shaheen from L&DShakers. We kind of have a like an accountability session every 2 weeks, and we chat about stuff. So shout out to Shaheen, and we talked this morning especially about this social learning and peer learning, and we both reflected and we said, and community building goes into that. Like community building is a space for peer and social learning where we learn from each other, and we're both at the same time experts and novices or beginners at something. And we really reflected on this, how traditionally, I guess, and I'm so happy to see a change in our industry in that perspective. We look at our learners, they're not even our colleagues, right? They're the learners. Like the learner is a director in XYZ role that has an MBA, probably has led I don't know how many teams and big budgets and so on. So we sometimes look at the learners and we kind of don't see that they're adults, efficient adults that have jobs and lead teams. And it's so weird that we believe somehow, and we're so ingrained in this content that I'm putting out there that they might need. And I've learned as well that when I've put those people in a room and I ask the right questions and I allowed the time for sharing and exchange to happen, they have very similar challenges and they have already a lot of answers to those challenges. And if in those rare moments where they don't have, or they're at an impasse, there's so much resources out there that you can support them with and curate, that I think content creation becomes almost obsolete by this point. There's so much out there, and don't even start with AI and ChatGPT and all those things, right? That's content is out there, unless you're designing something and you're working in a really specific industry, in a research and development branch where there's new, you're innovating and so on. So then you have to, okay, like we're tapping into something that like humanity hasn't been here before, so we need to. But how often does that happen?
Mm-hmm.
And then we go into this enablement, and it's almost as, it feels almost as freeing up learning, and that is scary because we need to put in, and I went through that journey myself. Like I started building this community, and as I saw it grow, I thought, this is a thing, and suddenly it felt like such a big weight on my shoulders, and it's my responsibility to kind of create this beautiful experience for everyone. And at a certain moment I realized that it truly isn't, and the moment I realized is when I saw that I do not have all the answers. Basically, I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea. And then I said, well, A, you've got no idea, because you kind of fell into this, and B, there are some people here that want to spend time here. So maybe let's ask them, why are they here? Maybe let's ask them what value means to them, what should happen here for them to show up. And actually, in our onboarding, we have this question and we ask them, what should happen in the space for you to find value and keep coming back to it? And people will tell you what they need. People will tell you exactly, I'm looking for mentors. I want to be coached. I want to, I don't know, get tips for others that have walked that path before, etc. And the human-centered design, I think it's beautiful because it allows this, it takes away that pressure of you having to come up with solutions to other people's problems, and puts again that the focus on them and holding that space and being curious enough to ask the right questions to truly understand what they need, and they will often be able to tell you what is missing, what do they need, what would be helpful. And so that's kind of a different, like whenever I don't know what to do, I'm like, I'm just going to put a call to action and get some people in the room and workshop with them. That's where facilitation skills are coming quite in handy. That's what where my journey took me, and applied to organizations. There's some forces there that might rub against that, actually. And that's where I say that culture plays such an important role, because suddenly you're bringing people, it's still work, right? And if I don't feel safe in general to speak up or to ask a question because the culture is not safe, and I always have to look at who's in this channel, like who are the people? Are there any leaders here? Are there any managers? Is it my manager? What do I ask? Like the moment you have that feeling, that's a bigger fish to fry than community in general, because truly a culture can enable or can block you building these type of spaces, safe spaces.
Yeah, maybe that's something that is part of the special sauce of the L&D Shakers, is that it isn't affiliated with any specific organization, that people do seem to feel very safe to ask questions that maybe they didn't feel like they could answer. I mean, ask in their own
Yeah.
culture, even if it's just simply this, oh, I don't want to look like I don't know that answer, right? Which is a
Yeah.
sign that there's not full psychological safety, that I'm not safe to learn in maybe my organization or in my own. I think another piece of that can sometimes be your own self-awareness. And then the other thing that stood out to me is this idea of, I wrote down that idea of exponential power in humans themselves. And so if you were holding all of L&D Shakers just on your shoulders, even as incredible of a human as you are, and even as much of a powerful learner as you are, which she is, and just like follow her on LinkedIn for 5 seconds and you learn like 20 million things. I'm like, save, heart, like. So I get more of you in my LinkedIn because of how many times I said that. But even with that, there is more power in the collective. And isn't this a moment when we need that? We need that humility that you're expressing, and that unity of coming together and saying the sum of our parts is better than us as individuals trying to like figure out how to make sense of the dynamically changing world around us. And so in that, going back to that 2023 workplace learning report from LinkedIn, of course, some of the top things have to be upskilling. And because we are living through still a very dynamically changing technological, moment in time. And I think that it's probably really easy for people that are living in a historically changing moment to just be like, well, we've had the internet. But the speed at which innovation and chat GPT that you mentioned and AI is coming is faster than any of us individually can read all of the books, know all of the things, and be all of the expert. And so I think there is a beautiful, what you described as the weight off your shoulders, release to say, we can't be the experts, even if we wanted to be, because things are changing so fast that we need to shift to thinking about how do we enable others? How do we enable a group to say, maybe if people are so niche down, that you do collectively say, oh, I know I can go here for this support or here for this support, or bring these 6 people together and create something beautiful that isn't so content heavy, to your point, on the front end, but is more open and facilitation oriented. And so that was just something that was coming to me, was this humility, the exponential power in humans. And I think I'm getting to a question here, but just processing, just kind of the beauty of that. But maybe it's this, as we think about the way forward in building more communities to enable more people, what do you think is the next skill for people to learn, or where are you trying to learn more next?
So when it comes to the skills, you already touched on facilitation. That's important when you're creating and holding these spaces, because you're shifting from this I'm at the centerpiece, like I'm the trainer, I'm the expert, etc., and you're going somewhere in the back and you're inviting everyone else to contribute, and everyone else is an expert, and you trust that the group, or in this case the community, has already the answers. That was, I think, a big shift that I did from Anamaria as a trainer, or as Anamaria's manager, to Anamaria as community builder and facilitator. I was sometimes like, what if people will know? And what I was like, it felt almost like so wanting to control everything and not trusting that people have answers. And I know that sounds weird, but one of the mental shifts that I had to make was, it's okay for me to go into an event or into a conversation and not have a layout of how that should play out by the end. Like, know that this is where we want to go, but not actually know, and not carve a path on how to get there. And facilitation is that skill. Facilitation
Yes.
is the skill that we need. And we also talked about this human-centered design, and something linked to that, and that's actually where I'm starting to read more and more, is the whole systems thinking and systems design, and how everything is interlinked and part of the bigger, like, how do we zoom out and one more out, and how do we look at the whole ecosystem, whether that's community, organizations, the way we collaborate, the way we work, from really high up, and try to have that helicopter view of what's happening, and not be super into our niche or silos or our thing, and try to do that. And these complex challenges you were talking about, it does require working across departments, working across silos, coming up together from different departments and different expertises, and putting our brains together to solve those challenges. And that's where communities are, they have this advantage of learning being social and distributed, and control being distributed, and people feeling empowered to make that space their own. And actually in L&DShakers, we always tell people, and when they join, that's a message that they get: I hope you can make this space your own.
Yes.
And then we actually put attend events, host events, launch your project, get involved in something, come up with something new that does not exist. So it sometimes feels as a permission, but people don't know that they're allowed to make that
Right.
space their own. And we're so
Right.
used to you're entering somewhere and there's something already designed for you and you can just soak it in. And some people will do that, but there are people that are like, ooh, what else can we do here? And can I start something of my own? And so communities already, if designed well, have that proactive mindset of, we're getting together, we can multiply, I can achieve so much more together, and how do we tackle these challenges collectively? And so thinking and facilitation and human-centered design, I think those are skills that are very important. And collaboration as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a mix of it all. But there's a lot of challenges that companies are facing at this moment on how they collaborate. And I guess when we were forcefully shifted to work remote or hybrid now, etc., like, we're not in the same place anymore, collaboration suddenly becomes a thing that we have to purposefully design and be mindful of, because it's not just happening because
Right.
of the proximity that we inevitably have of sitting next to each other. That's gone in many cases. So it was very easy to raise a head and be like, hey, I have a question. And now we're in different parts of the world, and how do we do that, without going into the other extreme of over collaborating, because that's a thing
Right.
as well.
Right.
So I think there's these are some of the skills
Mm.
that even us as L&D, it's worth looking into them, because
Mhm.
L&D will shift from, and when I look at trends, and one of the things that I see happening is the shift from individual I want to make sure that the individuals, they have career paths and they know where they're going and they have learning opportunities too. How do we enable teams to actually be productive as a team?
Mm.
And there's a lot of talk about high performing teams. So it's the shift from the individual to the team or to the departmental or to the
Right.
organizational learning and so on. So we're zooming out actually
Mm.
from where we were really close to the individual.
Yeah. I just love connecting and just the way that you think about all these different concepts in your experience. But one that I'd love to build on is the idea of the power of facilitation. I'm going to go psychology route here, but I think one of the reasons why, as a trainer and facilitator and learning experience designer myself, I think that the desire for control is a false expectation. Like somebody is paying me to either develop a training or deliver a training or be a facilitator, and so I need to come with my Tracy expertise and my research and all of that, instead of trusting that that same expertise and value and skills can play out really flexibly in responding to something that happens in the room. And in fact, some of the most powerful learning experiences that I've been a part of facilitating have been yes, there was a ton of preparation that went in, don't get me wrong, but there was also a lot of room for flexibility and space for humans to be at the center of the learning conversation and to bring forward what they want. And when I do work, people are almost surprised by that because they don't experience it as often or if at all. And so they're like, oh, we get to decide, we get to literally choose our own adventure in these pathways, and we get to make meaning of it, and nobody's going to check my work. Here is the content, here is the research, because many times there is research and application that's behind it, but you get to go choose on how to apply this to the challenges that you're facing, because we don't know exactly what those may be. We may have a hunch, and again, we may have research from, if it's a team that we've been working with, we may know a lot of what we think the answers are, but how much more powerful is it when the teams themselves come to those answers and have a fundamental mindset shift? So when we were talking about the L&D Shakers community, I'm ready to tell you my story of okay, so like I said, Kara Kirby, my new internet friend, who now we've become actual friends and connect regularly and have been work
She's
together, and
awesome.
it's been so beautiful. Introduced me to L&D Shakers. So I got in, and it was at a time when I was making some pretty significant shifts in the way I was doing some of my freelance work and starting to add some additional clients and trying to figure out what I really wanted to do with additional clients. I knew what I had been doing and loved it, and that work was going to be continuing, but I had more capacity and space to do some new things. And that came with a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of, okay, can I do this in this new space? Can I do this in this new way? And not waiting for permission from somebody to tell me I could do it. But I was kind of in that place. So in the moment of that time of kind of minor existential crisis and career crisis, financial crisis, just imagine all those things converging, I decided to sign up for one of the open, free, community-led events with Blanca, now I just blanked on her last name, Blanca Bellick from, she has an organization called
Leadership Associates.
Leadership Associates. Okay, so Blanca and this group peer mentorship and coaching session. And I thought I was going to come and just listen because they said you could bring forward problems and things like that. And I was like, this is the first experience I'd had in L&D Shakers. There's no way I'm bringing my bag of problems to these strangers that I don't know. But it was quiet for a couple minutes, and I just felt like, you know what? So I told them everything that was going on. Everybody said it was a safe space. And it really was that. And I mean, it's indescribable to be online with an international group of people I had never met, sharing very detailed things that were going on in work and really interrelated to personal life, of just this fear about this stuff going on. And everyone listened and gave such generous, thoughtful, researched responses that it truly was, I don't say it's like a pivotal, life-changing moment, because It gave me the answers that I did already know myself. It affirmed the things that I knew I needed to do to go forward with kind of humble confidence in that they could see in me that I couldn't see in myself. I mean, people left saying, I want to work with you tomorrow, like just things like that. That was just like, from just the energy that I brought and the energy that they brought. And so I want to say truly thank you. I tried to write this in like a thank you note to you several times, but I couldn't fully explain it. But you have built something that allowed for an individual in a kind of career moment to say, okay, I can do this. There are people around and a support network, and take the next steps and it was not a week later that I started working with my first new client that was in that space. And now 6 clients later into that, I just really have so much gratitude for that moment in time when my vulnerability was met with vulnerability, authenticity, and skill to encourage. And so maybe one other thing that came from that moment was this recognition that we don't have to have it all together. We don't always have to be the ones that are the expert or on, because I'm an Enneagram 3 like you. I am an achiever, and I can go and never stop, and I can lead others. I end up in leadership roles, but that was a moment where I needed to be poured into. I needed to be reminded of the skills that I had and the possibilities, even though I didn't know the exact pathway. I got so much affirmation from that moment, from the community that you built. So I just wanted to share that with you.
It's beautiful, Tracy. Thank you so much. And obviously the whole kudos goes to Blanca and to the, how she designed the session and to everyone else who was there. But see, these stories rarely come to me, but when they do, they often come in this I so to go back, I think that often people think about communities and they're like, yes, there are these events and then there's some sharing sessions and you're probably, you have some expert on the stage and you learn something from them and so on. And those are definitely events that we have. But this transformation or the impact comes from exactly this facilitated spaces, sessions that are loose, where people can bring in something that's very pressing for them. So clearly the what's in it for me at that moment is super high because you're talking about something that it's constantly keeping you awake at night, right? So for community, that's awesome because you bring in that case and people will jump into. And yes, I guess the way we've built it, in the past 3 years and the values that we infused into it and all that, I think that definitely has a merit. But you have actually like 90% of the merit, it's you. And I often have people coming back to me and say, I got a job through L&DShakers. Or someone came to me and said they started a local hub and then they were giving it away after a while. And when they were giving it away in that talk, they told me, I want to thank you for that 30 minutes conversation that we had a while back, like 8 months back, when I reached out and I said, hey, could I do this? Could I start this project, this local hub? And you fully supported and fully enabled. And you said, freehand, make it your own, go wild. Here's what we could do. Let's brainstorm. And then they said that was for me a very impactful moment because I realized that I can change stuff and I'm capable of things. And so I went ahead and I changed the job that I was unhappy with for a while now. And they shared that after such a long time. And it was a 30-minute conversation about something. So I think that's what it's people, right? And we're usually talking from the same level. No one is better than the other. There's rarely any hierarchy there. Like there's really, I'm expert in my field and I have zero information about your field, so teach me, and then I can teach you probably something that I know. So this kind of fluency in between experts and novices and beginner's mind and expert's mind and so on, that's amazing, and it's so empowering. And it does some, and it changed my life as well in many aspects, personal and professional. But to see other people's stories like your own, when that seemingly what sounded like a it was a sharing session, right? Had such a meaningful impact, but it was also because you were ready. You were ready for it as well. So it
Mhm.
kind of, that seed fell on fertile ground. You were open to do that. And
Right.
that's where the self-directedness
Mhm.
comes into place.
Yeah, L&D Shakers and the values had made it so clear that I could hop right in, that I
Mm.
understood this is a coaching session that I can sign up for, all of even the logistics that I could
Mhm.
go and be there. And again, ready to just listen. I think the values did push me into, yes, I was ready, but I also had extra permission, if that makes sense,
Mm.
to say, go for it. This is going to be an okay place. What I'm sharing stays here, and all like that was just all really clear. And that
Mm.
kudos to Blanca, because she did really make that these are the roles, these are not, you're not going to tell Tracy what to do. And so that just made it so powerful, so I wanted to make sure I
Ah,
shared that.
beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Yes. Okay, we could talk all day, as I know, but let's get to some of the book recommendations, podcast recommendations, learning recommendations. I'll put all the things that you included in the notes
Yes.
in the episode description. But if there's anything in particular you want to hit on.
I actually mentioned three different books. The Art of Gathering, obviously, it's very much linked to community building and how we gather and how we host. So I definitely recommend that. A book that had a lot of impact on myself, and I could read it over and over again, is Creative Confidence by Tom and David Kelly from IDEO. I found it very empowering, very freeing. It's like creativity is in all of us, and it takes so many different shapes and forms, and we're all creative, and just go for it. And then one of my absolute books on learning and how we learn, it's How We Learn, it's called, by Stanislas Dehaene. I might be mispronouncing his name big time. It's a great book on how the brain works, how we learn, and the whole neuroscience behind that. So those would be kind of like a learning book, a personal empowerment, creativity book, and a community building book that were really powerful for me.
Love it. And then
Yeah.
any podcasts or
Yes.
courses?
Yes. So again, we talked a lot about facilitation. I took a course, facilitation course by Mischief Makers, and it was a great experience. It's called Leading Groups, online, offline, and hybrid. They're hosting that regularly. That was a great experience for me to actually go back. Facilitation is very practical. You need to use it, and you need to hone that skill. There's no other way. You can read about it all you want, but going back in that course, it really took me to that structured and actually stop for a minute and look at what is facilitation from A to Z and how that looks like. And then one course that I'm super excited about this year is the Chaos Pilot, Designing Learning Spaces. They have some amazing courses in terms of design in general and learning design in particular. So I recommend them. I have not attended one. I will. I heard great things about them. Podcast. One of the first podcasts that I ever stumbled when I heard this word facilitation, I had no idea what it was Workshops Work by Miriam Hatness. She's amazing. Her guests are brilliant. The type of topics she always lands it into the concreteness. They're very well crafted conversations. Creative Confidence, again, IDEO. There is no episode there that doesn't leave me with notes and new possibilities that I see. And Michelle Oker's Learning Uncut is probably the most practical L&D podcast I discovered so far. She starts with the overarching things that we should do, and then she's like, okay, but what did you do, and how did that look like in your context? So there's a lot of practicality to it. Yes, and those are kind of the learning facilitation fave resources.
I love it. Oh, I'm so excited, Anna Maria, to dig more into all of those. And where can people find you in all the places that you would like people to find you?
So I always tell people that I live in LinkedIn. I am there all day, every day. So find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out with a message or a connection request. You'll find me with Anamaria Dorgo. It's no double N. Anamaria, one word. Dorgo.
Is there anything else you want to say? We didn't talk all that much about butter. Is there anything else you want to say about butter, or if people want to try it out, or?
Yes, we can definitely link some of the butter links in the show notes as well. We have a community, of course. Shout out to the community. It's a space specifically designed for facilitators and people in general that are hosting collaborative sessions. You might not call yourself a facilitator, be a team leader, you might be a consultant, you might be an educator, a trainer, a coach. There's for sure, you're going to find something useful there. We have tons of sharing sessions and learning session and beautiful resources. And butter, everyone can give it a try. You can sign up for free and just play around. But I'm going to say one thing, it is game changing for, again, people that are hosting virtual, synchronous, collaborative sessions. And the reason why it's game changing, it's because it makes it very intuitive and very easy for participants to engage with your content or your design. But even more than that, or on top of that, is for whoever takes the facilitator role, it makes it incredibly easy to design the session and host it without the hustle of the tech choreography of 700 other tools that you would need to make it engaging and all that. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop for building these virtual collaborative sessions. And I can tell you more about that, but we'll link that in the notes. We're hosting demos. Feel free to pop in at any time. We're a really friendly bunch and always very happy to show you the product and see if that fits, your goals and the things you want to achieve. Yeah.
I've had so much fun playing with it myself in different ways, and then also being a participant in some sessions that you've run using it. And I echo everything that you just said there. Like, as a facilitator, as someone that does a lot of online sessions, what you said in particular about the choreography, I think you said, of the different tech tools to really make it engaging. That was something I've spent a lot of time with, those billions of tech tools, and it really does allow you to just kind of be in one spot.
Just wanted to make like one point, and something that we hear a lot of our users saying, I haven't changed anything in my design. Like, I haven't really, it's still me hosting the session, but the fact that I host it in Butter, it makes it much more engaging without me actually having to tweak anything. And I think that's the biggest compliment that one can give the tool. Like, I take something, I plot it in there, and without tweaking it too much, just the fact that the tool gives me other superpowers, my sessions are much more engaging and people are much more attentive and present in there. So I'm like, okay, love it.
That is
give it a try.
Yes.
Thank you, Tracy. This was amazing. Great chat. Gosh, there's so much more I wanted to deep dive into with you.
I know. You got to come back on sometime, or we have to have another coffee chat about engagement. I wanted to hit more on that and just so many things. But I know our paths will continue to cross. And just thank you so much again, one more time, for just the generosity of spirit and research and rigor that you really bring to the L&D community and the Butter community. It's powerful, and you are, you probably don't like this term, but you are a thought leader, out there in this space. And I look forward to just continuing to follow the amazing things you do and be a part of the L&DShakers community. Thanks so much for listening to the Building Thinkers podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends. And if you enjoyed what you heard, please leave a podcast rating and review. That helps more listeners find us in the world of podcasting algorithms. You can find out more about my learning and development strategy services at buildingthinkers.com. And remember, there's no limit to what you can learn.